Hi, I'm Andy Wright, partner in the technology practice here at Odgers. And in this series, Secrets to Scaling, I sit down with the top technology leaders to hear what they've learned on the path to scaling Europe's most exciting companies. And today I am honored to be joined by Elona Mortimer-Zhika, who, as CEO of Iris Software, led the company through explosive international growth, culminating in a $4 billion exit and positioning Iris as one of the largest privately owned software companies. Elona, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So let's start with the early years. Let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us about those early years and how they shaped you today?
Oh, wow. Yes. So I was born in Albania, very different country to the UK, under dictatorship for 50 years. So my childhood was very different to most people I know. Country was closed in completely. No one was allowed in or out. One TV station for hours a day, political propaganda only. Um, so my world, I guess, was very small. And then when I was 16, I was really lucky to compete and win a scholarship to come to the UK to go to an international college. College had Nelson Mandela as its president. It's called United World College. There's 18 of them across the world, with the premise being that education is the best weapon we have to unite the world. So you can be clever, you can be talented, but if you're born in a country like Albania, then your opportunities are going to be very different. So I went from never having met anybody that was an Albanian before to going to an amazing college with 200 kids from over 130 different countries. And that was the experience that has probably shaped me the most as the leader that I have become. It was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most amazing thing as well. It made my world big overnight and taught me a lot about a thirst for learning, because I realized, how much more there was to learn. It taught me a lot about collaboration, because when you've got 16-year-olds from all different paths of life, there's a lot of biases and conflict that comes with that. Taught me a lot about curiosity, because, everybody had a different viewpoint, and the diversity of thinking that you get when you bring people from different paths of life around the table is unbelievable. And that power of diversity, I think, is something I've tried to carry with me in all the other jobs I've done, and ultimately in the culture that I, created at Iris with the rest of my management team. But the best thing it really taught me was how much better it was to never be the smartest person in the room. Uh, it's all about people. So I am a big people person, and I've been super successful because of the teams and the people that have been around me. It's not been me, it's been the great talent that I've been privileged to hire and work with. And I owe them a lot. So that was my beginning. And then I became an accountant, because my dad was an accountant, Andy, and I loved maths, and I was always going to be an accountant. So I studied accounting and economics at uni. I joined Big Four. So I spent 9 years at Big Four, first Arthur Andersen, then Deloitte, um, only on software. So I'm not a techie. My background is definitely finance, but I only work for software businesses. And then I sort of specialized for private equity, and I was lucky enough to join one of my clients at the time called Decision, that were PE backed. So my PE journey, if you like, started back in 2009. So about 16 years ago, and I fell in love with private equity ever since. It's fast paced, you can't hide anywhere, which is great. You're accountable, you can fail fast, you learn a lot, you create a lot of value, and you have skin in the game as well if you work for a PE-backed business, which is great. So I spent 7 years at Decision, and in that time, we had a lot of refinancing and listed for a while in NASDAQ, were bought by our competition, went back to being PE-backed. So I learned a lot about different cycles of private equity, but mostly I learned how you should remain hungry in paradise, because Decision was the leader in text messaging, and then people stopped using text message, and we didn't reinvent fast enough. It's a great business again today through acquisition, but it made me really want to join a business that was focused on top line growth. And actually, my journey at Iris started over 20 years ago. So I audited them when I was at Deloitte. So I feel like I've come back full circle and joined an amazing business that serves accountants. And me being an accountant, I felt right at home.
And you've talked a lot about how accountants can help companies and the economy thrive. I know you get super excited about accounting, which is great. And I think you talked about the skill set that you get as an accountant as well, in terms of the sort of data-driven approach, the metrics, the commerciality. So it kind of makes sense that accountants make good CEOs in my mind, but a lot of people struggle to make that jump that you did. So what would you say to people that want to make that jump, but maybe find it a little bit more difficult?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, I genuinely think finance is a fantastic foundation for a CEO because, as you said, you can have great ideas, great strategy, great vision, but fundamentally, we're here to run viable businesses, scalable businesses that are underpinned by business plans and being pedantic about your metrics and your data, particularly in private equity, is super important. So that's a value that you can absolutely bring to the table firsthand compared to those that have come from a different route into the CEO role. And it's interesting that I think it's something like over 50%, it might be 56% of today's FTSE 100 CEOs have got a finance background, and about 25% that actually got a finance qualification, which is amazing. But to the point that you made, mostly you see the roots coming from the tech side or the growth side, and people get that much better. When you are coming at it from the finance route, as I said, you bring a lot to the table, but the things you need to watch out for are that you aren't being, over-indexed on the finance only. The numbers really matter. Profit matters, cash matters, but it's not just the what, it's the how. I think about it like a drawing that you give a child and then they color it. And your job is to not just be the drawing, be the numbers. Your job is to add the color, to make those numbers speak and to be able to explain those to the business in a way that the business is going to own it, to have KPIs that are, used by the business really quickly and not just at one point in time, that can drive decisions. So I think it's really important when you are the CEO that's come from the finance route that you don't just look at numbers alone from the kind of the purse strings, because that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to go protect the EBITDA, and it's very easy to protect the EBITDA by cutting costs. But that's not your job. Your job is to grow the business. So you can cut costs, but actually the question you need to answer and challenge your team on is, can you use that money wisely somewhere else? Can you invest it for growth? So the growth mindset is the bit that you've got to train your brain on, because you've been trained all this time to save money, and hold the business to account. And now it's spend money, but spend the money in a wise way. Spend the money where you can fail fast, where you can experiment, where you keep growing your business and staying innovative and curious, as I mentioned. So that's super important. Also really important that you do a stint, I believe, outside of finance. If you want to become a CEO and you're coming at it from the CFO route, then doing a stint in a different area of the business is important. I was chief of staff for a while at my previous business. I was a COO before I became CEO. And what that does is that it gives you a 360-degree view of the business and the world. Because as I said, you might be passionate about numbers, but the other side want to keep growing and want to keep innovating. So walking in their shoes is really important. So I think that really helps. And then really the last thing to say, which is probably normal for anybody that comes into a CEO role, regardless of the route that you came in, is that you're always going to have a passion for the discipline you came from. And the difference is when you're a CFO, you can get yourself out of a hole. You have been trained to be in that discipline and you're running a vertical. When you're the CEO, you are running a horizontal. You are a leader of leaders. You're no longer the expert in your field. So you need to be really, really aware of your strengths and your areas of weakness or development. And you need to know enough to be dangerous and to hold your team to account. But you need to recognize that they're the experts, so they're going to have to be empowered to do it. But your job becomes a bit like a football manager. You don't even have to play football, but you need to know what makes a good football team, and you need to play everybody to their strengths. So you need to make sure that the team as a whole is covered on all areas that they need. And then you need to have some people on the bench or your subs for your succession planning, because the team gets tired, business moves fast enough, and you need different people for different eras. So it's a different role. And the more of that you do before you get to the job, or the more exposure you have to that, the better a CEO you'll be. And I think I learned more of that when I was COO than CEO, if I'm being honest.
And that's where it makes sense that you don't necessarily have to be an engineer to run a software company. You don't have to be the football player. You could be the football manager. You could be the Jose Mourinho.
As long as you cover for those areas and you're self-aware. I mean, we can't all be all things, right?
Yeah.
We all have to come from an angle. And if you come at it from the techie perspective, then you're going to need the best CFO ever. So if you come at it from a sales perspective, then you might need the best CPO ever. So we all need, it's a team game. And I think one thing that I learned probably too late in my career is that throughout our education system, or even our appraisal systems, we tend to focus on the things we don't know how to do. We give people, if you have an appraisal, people tell you, here's your areas for development. And as great as that is, the reality is when you get to the level of being a leader, there is a good reason as to why you're good at some things and not so good at those other things. They don't come naturally to you. It's not your natural passion. So actually, what I learned too late in life is to not worry about the things that I don't know, but over-index on the things that I do know and play to my strengths, and be self-aware of those that I don't know and have people that cover me for those. Because if I tried, to your question, I'm not a techie, but I ran a software business. If I tried to be a techie, I'm sure I could have a go at it, and I would bet myself that I could learn it and all of that. But I think I'd be at best a 7 out of 10. So that's pretty average, isn't it? And I wasted all of this time to be a 7 out of 10, when really I should play to my 10 out of 10s, and I should hire people that are all operating in their 10 out of 10s. And then as a team, you're all playing to your strengths.
Yeah. I think your 7 out of 10 would probably be most people's 10 out of 10, to be fair. But anyway, so let's talk about Iris. It's so interesting hearing your story about kind of profitability and growth, and the fact that everything's important. And if you look at Iris and the underlying numbers, obviously we talk about the $4 billion exit as the big eye-catching headline, but you look at everything else and it tells that picture of rounded growth. You look at the 500 million revenue target that you smashed. You look at 40 acquisitions, 40% of business in the US. I heard this story about you auditing Iris when it was 5 million.
Yeah.
And it's now what, 200?
In EBITDA, over 200.
Over 200 million EBITDA. So, I mean, it's just an incredible story. But I think what's unique about it is that rounded growth.
Yes.
And if we think about private equity, I think that it's quite difficult to come by that kind of rounded growth, that profitable growth that's sustainable. And I think particularly recently, the private equity market has struggled a little bit. So, what do you think are the issues that you get in some other companies that can't sort of have the same growth story that Iris did?
Like I loved Iris. I love Iris, and every CEO should love the business that they run. I was privileged to be able to do that. And the fundamentals of the business and why it was so successful is that it had bottom line protection. We sold products that customers needed to buy. It wasn't a nice to have. It's something that they needed to buy. And also it was resilient to economic cycles. So when you start building a business, you have got to really think about what's the problem that you're trying to solve. And is this problem a flavor of the month? Or is this problem something that will continue for a long time? At its core, and the way that Iris started, it was to serve accountants. And we file more than the rest of our competition put together, more than anybody else with tax returns with HMRC, for example. And one thing's for certain, death and taxes, they say.
Going away.
So, in a business or in an economy where things are moving all the time, there is political, macroeconomic factors. Being in a market where you've got that bottom line protection, where somebody will buy your product anyway, it's a privilege, if I'm honest. And then your job as a CEO is, how do I grow it? How do I diversify it? And when you are in a business like that and you're the market leader, you can run out of runway because you're relying on the market growing in order for you to continue to grow. And at some point in time, there's only so much more that you've got left. So increasing TAM, the total addressable market, is really, really important, which is why always diversifying yourself is key. And Iris itself is now a 47-year-old business. It started with accountants, and it moved into payroll, and it moved into HR, then it moved into education. And it was my job as CEO to say, well, I'm going to grow education because that was new. That happened when I just arrived in the business. But where else am I going to go? And the easiest way is to add a new vertical. And there just wasn't the thing to buy, because you can't just decide you're going to go into a market and you might have a product and that gives you some right to win. You've got zero right to win. If you want to win in a market, you need a brand, you need a proposition, you need the customers following you need loyalty. So really, the easiest way to do it is to buy something that can take you to be the market leader in the next 3 years. And we couldn't find that in a new vertical. So I decided to take us to the US. And it started as an experiment. But as you said earlier, the US is now 40% of the group. And we did really well by buying best of breed companies, putting them together in a way that 1 + 1 = 3, and then continuing to invest. Because in answer to the question of how do you do it, you've got to always disrupt yourself. You've got to maintain hunger in paradise. Doesn't matter how good you are. You've got to always question, am I good because of me? Am I good because of the market? And you've got to continue to diversify and expand your product proposition through buy, build, or partner, and expand your TAM, because that's the only way you're going to demand a bigger wallet size from your customers. And in doing all of that, having the right commercial model is really important, and making sure you're on subscription, making sure that you look after your customer base is really, really important, because it's a lot easier to keep a customer than to get a new one. And in a business like Iris or most software businesses, that customer is going to pick up a price rise at the end of their renewal year, and then they're going to buy more from you. So actually you grow just through your existing customers. So being pedantic about GRR and ERR is key. So it goes back to, that's why it's important to have some finance people at the top of a well-successful business, because the way you price, the way you commercialize is really important. And we bought a lot of businesses. When I was at Iris, I was lucky enough to buy some amazing businesses, myself and the team. And you're buying amazing people, amazing products. But I would say probably in more than 50% of the businesses that we bought, this was a great idea, a great business run by a great founder. They hadn't commercialized it fully enough. They hadn't put the right pricing models in. There was more to go from a pricing perspective, but most importantly, from a value perspective. They were providing value to the customer that they weren't monetizing. So that was a great way for us to grow and make sure that 1 + 1 = 3, as I like to say.
And I think when you hear about the M&A journey as well, one thing that stands out is the cultural audits that you did on those businesses. It wasn't just financial due diligence. It was looking at the people, the values in that business. Is that going to integrate onto the Iris platform? And I think that is another area where businesses can go wrong on a buy and build journey, is just to acquire a business because it looks right, but
it's really, I think it's the most important thing. Going back to the start of this conversation, I love people. And it's all about people, right? Your customers are people, your employees are people, and you need those employees to be fully engaged and high performing in order to deliver to that customer base and to come on that journey. And Iris has always been a great business, and he was always successful in acquiring businesses. But until about 2018, so we last sold in 2018, before we sold for 4 billion, we sold for 1.3 billion pounds. And he was the largest multiple anybody had in the UK and third largest in Europe. It was a huge success. The business was only making 60 million of EBITDA at the time, but it was a house of brands. And I couldn't scale it more as a CEO with the foundations as they were. There wasn't a one solid foundation. People didn't know they worked for Iris because none of the M&As had been integrated. And when you buy a business, you're buying an amazing team of people. And we don't buy distressed businesses at Iris. We buy amazing businesses that are amazing in their own right. And we feel that together we can become stronger. But it's hard to talk about a culture or an integration if you as a business don't identify yourself with a culture. So I remember as COO, the first job I did was hire a new chief people officer. Our old chief people officer had retired. And the first homework I gave her is that we needed a new mission, vision, and a set of values. And so we came out with our values. They spelled the word impact. It was intentional that they spelled the word, because how many businesses do you know? They've all got values. But if you ask their employees what are their values, they just go, oh, hang on a minute. I think it's a trust. And they try to remember the boardroom, or maybe it was put down on a wall somewhere. So impact stands for innovation, making it happen, passion, accountability, customer, and teamwork. And we celebrate it and we laminate it, because laminating is not enough, but you need to do it because you've got to find a way to make it visible so that people get on the journey, particularly when you grow from 700 people to 4,000 people like we did. But then you've got to celebrate it and make it part of your life. And then it becomes easier, because when I acquire a new business, I look at your values, I look at mine, and then I can talk to you in a language that you understand. And I can say, well, look, we have innovation as one of our values, and you've got curiosity as one of yours. They're more or less the same thing. It's about challenging the status quo, whatever. So we'll do well together. And that's really important, because the last thing you want to do is acquire a business and that team leave you. People always worry that a business will be acquired and they might need to do restructuring, and is that job safe? I always think of the opposite. Are they going to leave me because they now think that they're going to be bought by a bigger company and the culture is going to change? Because that really devalues your investment, right? So super important that people come first and that culture audit comes first, and that you have a great onboarding process to bring those people within the bigger family that they're now joining.
Iris is a big business now. It's worth 4 billion. It's probably worth much more than that now.
Well, then we've acquired two businesses that are jointly worth $1 billion since we sold for 4 billion. So it's going to be over 5 billion
We're
now.
approaching 10. And then you've got, in Europe, you've got Access, you've got Visma,
Yes.
Visma 20 billion euro valuation. You've got massive software companies in Europe that are still under private ownership. And you've got this private IPO where investors come around the cap table and the company still doesn't go public. Do companies like this need to go public eventually, or do they stay private?
I mean, I guess eventually the size of the check becomes so big that you would have to have multiple people owning you. And then that becomes a bit of a headache, if you like, at the boardroom, because you can't have a lot of different investors around the table. But what's interesting is, how much longer these amazing businesses have stayed in private equity than it used to be the norm, right? I mean, there's now when it's going to be tens of billions of EV, and Access will be the same. And I remember people asking me when Iris was 1.3 billion, I remember people saying to me, well, surely next time IPO is going to be the key route. And I kept thinking, God, I've got to get it ready, for IPO, which is different to just being ready to sell your business under PE, because there's a lot of governance that comes with, listing. But it was not even on the cards at all when we sold Iris for 4. And I am pretty certain that it's going to go through at least another PE round at 10 next time, because there's a lot of value I think private equity can bring to the table. The biggest one for me is that you are allowed to fail fast, because you don't have to tell the world. You can operate in private. That means you can be innovative, you can continue disrupting, you can try new ideas. And as long as you're failing fast and you're not, investing a lot of money before you realize it was the worst idea ever, then that's great, because you can keep doing that without telling the market and then explaining yourself what happened. So that's really fantastic for a software business because technology around us moves so fast that you've got to continue to move at the same pace as well. I remember when we invested in our last platform where AI wasn't a thing then, but now it is, and you're still building your platform. So you've got to keep going. You've got to keep innovating. The other thing is that under private equity, you are able to be more growth mindset and more long-term. If you are with the right private equity owners, HG have owned Iris 20 years on and off, and they have been amazing growth mindset owners. If I went to the board and I asked for money, they'd always say, we'll give you twice as much. How much faster can you go? And they'd always say, do the right thing for the business. And there's been times I've gone to the board and said, we're about to sell a year from now, 2 years from now. You're not going to make your money back. Should we invest or should we leave this for the next cycle? And they've always said, it's the right thing for the business. You invest, because even if it might hurt your EBITDA by investing, actually it's a one-off expense anyway, and hopefully you'll see benefit in the future. But most importantly, for the right investment, it improves your multiple. So you get it back anyway, and it's about the quality of the businesses that are being built. So the right PE partner that's not there to just cut costs, but it's there to grow the revenue, can be fantastic because it gives you ability to invest for the future. Whilst under a listed environment, you've got to show the market that you're making profits and you're making a return within a 12-month window. And that's always hard to do. You can't get your money back in 12 months. So I think it's an amazing way to grow value. And then, when it comes to the end of the cycle, I'm sure when Visma lists and Access lists one day, I'm sure HG will remain a key shareholder of a listed business and still make money, right? So, but no, it's, for me, I love PE. As I said, you can make great quick returns. You have skin in the game. There's nowhere to hide, so you're accountable, and I love that. And with the right partners and growth mindset environment, then you can have a lot of fun growing the top line as well.
Yeah, you can see that longevity makes a massive difference of that 3 to 5 year cycle that a lot of private equity firms go through. You can't get that rounded growth that you got at Iris.
Absolutely.
And one other aspect that you got at Iris that other tech companies and private equity companies don't get is diversity. So I think you achieved 48% female representation.
49.
49, okay, all right.
Not being
My
pedantic
research is
or
out of
anything.
date.
Yeah,
49% is amazing. Well, compared to 25% average in the tech industry, that is outstanding. And I think it was 43% in senior positions as well, which is even more crucial as well. So I suppose, so I'm the father of 2 young daughters, and I'm not saying they're going to be the next Elona, Mortimer-Zhika and CEOs.
They're going to be better. They're going to be whatever they want to be. That's the beauty of it all.
Exactly. We want them to have that chance, and we want, people from any background to have that chance.
Absolutely.
So what do we need to do? How do we improve those pathways to diverse leadership, particularly in private equity and technology?
I think it's a great question. And I think what I've come to realize is that what you need is a purposeful, intentional behavior. Like you need to be proactive about it, because you never find somebody that's going to say diversity is not important. Nobody's going to say that. You're never going to find somebody that intentionally is going to treat a male better than a female. Like on the face of it, people are not going to do that. But what happens is that there is bias. So it's unconscious bias. And then there is, I think, sorry to say, ignorance as well, because people will say, I treat everybody the same, and so I don't have a problem. The best person won. Like I interviewed people and I hired this person. I hired Andy because they were the best. And what they don't do is appreciate the difference between equality and equity.
Yeah.
And equity means that when you are hiring Andy, was it, and you interviewed 5 people, how many, were they all male, or was there some female representation there? And if there was no female representation there, did you just go, well, the headhunters didn't bring me anybody? Or did you push them to bring you somebody? And did you create different pathways for those people to be there? Because the issue is that it's a systemic problem. There's just not enough diversity in the pipeline stage. Not enough people of diverse backgrounds are applying. And therefore, it's very easy for business leaders to go, well, this is what I got, and meritocracy won. Of course, meritocracy is always going to win, but it's our job as leaders to fish in more open ponds and create opportunity for those that wouldn't have it otherwise. It's our job not to just hold the door open. We got to push those doors open.
Mm-hmm.
So creating diversity at the pipeline stage, I think, is the hardest problem, because once you have it there, then, it's about making sure that you retain people and then you promote people. And that's easier. It still requires systemic change and proper programs that you need to make. So at Iris, we have returnship programs, for example, for women who may be, typically women, that could be men, but typically women who maybe gave up their careers because they wanted to be mothers for 10 years, and then they don't have the confidence it takes to join the workforce again. We have Thrive programs for all of our female leaders. We have belonging groups to make sure that people recognize themselves with other people in the organization and all of that. But most importantly, what we tried to do was to affect the pipeline. So we created a business purpose, and the business purpose was that we would help the next generation become ready for work. So all the charities that we worked with were charities that were helping the next generation. That's not helping Elona, the CEO of Iris today. It's going to help the CEO 10 years from now to not have the problem that I had. So charities that help kids to read, or charities that teach girls about technology, or Princess Trust. So all charities that are with underprivileged and underrepresented. And then obviously I'm passionate about that because of my personal story. And then concurrent to that, I'm also on the board of HG Foundation. Again, HG are an amazing PE investor, but they're also very generous, and they want to build sustainable businesses, but they also recognize that there's a talent gap between, there's more jobs than there are people in tech, and then opportunities aren't afforded to everybody. So they have committed millions of pounds out of their funds to help the next generation, as I do, a lot of work with the amazing team at HG Foundation to change the lives of, I think it's 50,000 youths at the moment at scale. And we have to do something is the message here. We can't just sit on our laurels and go, I'm a good person, I treat people okay, therefore it's okay. You've got to have intention, you've got to have purpose, and you've got to do something about it to open those doors, to give education opportunities or job opportunities to those that don't have it.
I also think with everything that's happening in the world now, with the biggest disruption we've ever gone through with artificial intelligence, it's even more important, or more important than ever, that we have a diverse representation of people building these systems, because technology is going to be everywhere.
100%. I mean, if you think that X% of the jobs are going to be replaced by robots,
Yeah.
then we're losing that diversity of thinking even more, right? So it's super important. I don't think and I know there's been a lot of debate on this at a macro level more recently, but at a global level. But this isn't about, is this the right thing or not? It's absolutely the right thing. And it's making sure that money is spent in the right way. And all I'm going to say as well is, people talk about D&I budgets and whatever. I don't ever recall having the DEI budget at Iris. This is something you either want to do or you don't want to do. And you can create that as part of your culture, and it doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost you more money to hire the right people. You can change a job spec to make sure that it speaks to a woman the same way as it speaks to a man, because we all know, sorry, I know I'm talking to a man here, but you do recruit, you do this for a living, right? If there's 10 things down in a job spec and a woman has done 8 of them, she's not going to apply. A guy's done 6 and he's going to apply. And I always say to my team, do you need all 10? And if you figure out what you need, because you only need probably 3, and then say ability to rather than experience off. Because you might not have the experience, but you have the ability to do something. So those things don't cost you money. So this whole aspects about slashing DI budgets, I never had a budget. I never spent more money because I made Iris more diverse. But what I did get is more staff retention, more innovation, better thinking, better decision making. So it was profitable. It didn't cost me any money. And I think that's the topic we don't discuss enough.
Yeah, it makes sense from a business perspective. You can see the value in the P&L. It's not
Absolutely.
a separate part of the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it becomes part of your culture, and all the belonging groups that we created. Employees do it for themselves. They are the people that are running the committees. They're organizing the events. They want to do it. So that's the best culture, when people are doing it for themselves, because it's real. It's part of what you do every day. It's not like, once a year get somebody, to do a survey and tell you that you're great. So I think it's really important. And actually, I read it's an old quote, but I got reminded of it the other day, and it reminds me of the conversation we had, difference between a CFO and a CEO, and the CFO saying, "What if we spend all of this money on training and developing our people, and they go?" And the CEO going, "Oh, what if we don't, and they all stay?"
Real estate. Yeah.
And it's all about people, and that shift of invest in a team because you're going to get it back 10x. And the way you invest is to create an environment where that is similar to the world that they live in.
Yeah.
You can't just spray paint people to be the version you want them to be. They've just got to bring themselves to the table. And that's when, they feel that they have permission to bring ideas and innovate and everything else. That's where growth comes from, by just creating a safe environment where they're just being themselves. Nobody else, no better, no worse, just themselves.
Yeah. So you won the CEO of the Year award, I think, in 2023 at the UK
Yes.
Tech Awards. So what?
But only after Iris won, UK Tech Company of the Year. So I think that was a bigger accolade.
Yeah. Okay.
Your business winning first is the bigger accolade.
What in your mind makes a great CEO?
It's a good question. I think, as I said earlier, I think leaders need to be self-aware. You've got to know. It doesn't matter if you think you're great or not. You're not going to be great at everything. So knowing what you don't know is really, really important. And then you cover yourself for those areas. I think to many extents, we need to be chameleons as well. You're meant to be collaborative, but you also need to call the shots when you need to, which I know is in conflict. You've got to be a critical thinker and think about the future, but you also need to be a solutions provider and do things there and then. You've got to be flexible, but at the same time, you need to get stuff done and you need to hold people accountable. So you've got to be all of those things. But to me, a great leader is somebody that recognizes there is a problem that they're fixing, like a value that they want to add, and is really, really relentless and does that with, excellent execution, whether it's a customer thing they're trying to fix, or it's an innovation thing or a people thing, whatever it is, they do that with excellent execution and they are relentless about it. I think that a better leader is not just thinking of today's problem. They're thinking of what's the problem going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what I'm building today, is it going to survive tomorrow? Is it scalable? Is it future-proof? Is it still going to be relevant? And can I fix tomorrow's problem with what I'm doing today? And then the best leaders I've seen is that they do those things, but they do them with humility and connectivity and empathy, and they're inspirational. They bring customers to the table to follow them. They bring their teams to the table to follow them. And when you're an inspiring leader, people follow you, and then they get impacted by your energy because energy is infectious. So then they want to be inspiring as well. And then they bring their ideas to the table. And that's how there's a snowball effect. If you become a leader of leaders, I think that's the best leader you can hope to be.
So in doing my research, I actually asked someone that used to work with you what makes you a great CEO. So if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you what someone said. So the quote goes, "The boss pushes hard, stays close, and backs you to go further. There's no comfort zones, just constant momentum. She'll call your BS, raise your game, and make sure you never play small. The balance of demanding results but empowering you to deliver sets her apart from the others. But she is also an amazing human being."
Oh my God.
Can you guess?
You need to tell me.
He said that about you. Can you have a guess? I'm going to hold my hand now because it's got the person's name in it. Can't guess. It was actually Chris Smith, who was introduced by Odgers back in 2020 as your chief commercial officer. And I think he helped with some of that explosive growth you talked about earlier.
That's amazing. I thought it might be Chris because he always calls me boss. Even though I have stopped being his boss a while ago, he always calls me boss, which is amazing. But obviously I didn't want to no, that took me aback. So thank you.
Nice.
But I think it's important for any CEO to love the job they do. And if you love the job you do, then it comes with everything, right? It comes with your passion. It comes with your frustration. It comes with everything. and you infect people and you breed people that love that business the same as you do. And I think the thing that I'm probably most proudest of at Iris is the fact that we are, we've built a great culture now, and I've left, but I can still see how the business is blooming, and I'm proud of the great place to work accolades we had, not just in the UK for 5 years running in the UK, but in every country we were at, and great place to work for women, for wellness, and there is a sort of hashtag Love Iris following. I just went to a wedding in Mexico. I just came back from Cancun, and it was 2 Iris people that got married, and they haven't been at Iris for 5 years, but there was 8 Iris families invited to the wedding, which goes to show how important those personal connections are. Because for somebody like Chris, they will be in my life forever, and maybe we'll work together one day. But there's always that, genuine affection, connection, and professional respect that you will have when you have been through the trenches together. Because working in private equity is rewarding, but it's very difficult and challenging. And to be able to cross the line together and sell the business, that is a huge achievement. And when you go through that experience, it does bond you for life. So very, very grateful.
Awesome achievement. Yeah.
Well,
So
amazing people.
it brings us on to the next chapter and today and sort of going forward. So I know you've sort of stepped down from the CEO role in December to focus on family, the work with the HG Foundation, and then expanding your board portfolio a bit further. So people always ask this question of what did a day in the life look like? So I'm just intrigued of what was a day like when you were running Iris, 3,500 people company, to what it looks like today, or what you want it to look like today?
Yeah, wow, very good question. So it was back-to-back meetings, and I think I'm quite efficient, but I'm also, and I empower people, but I also felt like I need to be in the know. So, and as much as I tried to get, to only be in the room for the meetings that mattered, the business keeps growing. So there's a lot of demand. So you're on back-to-back meetings, lots of emails, and I love answering an email. You asked me this earlier. I think I've got FOMO. And you got to recognize as a business leader, as a CEO, that you probably only hear about 10%, if you're lucky, of the things that are going on, because nobody tells you everything, right? If there's a problem, they want to fix it first, all of that. So therefore, I've got to assume that if it's hit my inbox, it will be important. And also,
I should say for people listening that I asked you off camera, do you answer every email? Because I remember at Iris, you answered every single email I ever sent you, and that's quite rare. So I think how you have the capacity to answer every email is another interesting question. But
I do that. So partly I read everything because I've got FOMO. I'm a little bit, OCD, so everything got filed, nothing got deleted, and everything had a folder so I could find it. And I've got picture memory. So if you've sent me something, then I know where it's gone, I can get to it. So the idea of having like 5,000 emails on my inbox just makes me shiver, if I'm being honest.
You're very different.
So I've got to read it all. And then I also remember coming up the ranks, how I felt when somebody acknowledged my email. Because you can be very busy, but you're never too busy to be nice. And people remember it. And in most of the cases, the emails that I got, 90% of the emails that I got, were from somebody in the team sending me something. And that person probably worked really hard to send an email to the CEO. They might have, not to me, but to any CEO. I remember myself, if I was to email somebody, I've got to reword it, ask somebody to read it, whatever. Or even if it's not that, even if it is, they worked really hard on the attachment they send you, whatever it is. So you're not acknowledging that when, it takes like a second to say thank you. In fact, at the bottom of my signature, it just said thank you, Elona. So sometimes I could just respond, I could just press send. I think it's, disrespectful to their time. And just because I am the CEO, it doesn't make my time more important than your time. Time is valuable for everybody. And as I said, I think it matters, and I value my relationships, and it takes very little time to be nice. And you've got to always remember where you came from,
I like that.
because, we don't want to breed arrogant leaders, and being approachable is how then people come to you and feel comfortable to bring you problems, solutions, other things that they wouldn't have done otherwise. So, and especially in today's world where you're contactable all the time, you can't be aloof. So that's why I did it. But you asked, how was my day? Lots of meetings, but lots of decisions. And the hardest bit and the most exciting bit was the subject changing, because you probably between 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. have between 8 to 10 meetings a day, depending how long they are. And then the context shifting of each meeting is different. And what was hard, but also exhilarating, and I realized how much I missed it, is that you could be in this meeting and it could be a problem, right? Somebody brought a problem, or you realize we've done something wrong and you're like frustrated. But the next meeting is, somebody that's waited, I don't know, 3 weeks to come and present a great idea to you, or maybe it's a promotion or whatever, and you've got to go on the next meeting and feel really excited and go, hello, and how are you? Because you're on show the whole time. And as a CEO, your energy becomes their energy. So you can't infect people with negative energy because you had a bad meeting. So the ability for your brain to shift subjects, and the ability for you emotionally to start each meeting with a smile on your face, they're hard to do as a leader. Um, but it's also exhilarating. And I've got to say, when I retired, in inverted commas, I say that because I think it lasted about a week, I realized how much I was missing that side of it. Like, I was busy. I'm on other boards. I do a lot of philanthropy. It was my time to see my friends, my family. But what I wasn't doing is use that part of my brain in the same way. I miss the stress, and I miss the decision making and the impact that comes with that. So I very soon decided that I definitely wanted to pursue a plural career sooner rather than later. But I've got some simple criteria, and there's only 3 criteria. One of them is it's got to be with the right team of people. Like, they've got to be passionate about what they're doing. Because if the CEO and the executive team are not passionate about what they're doing, and passion doesn't mean they have life easy. Passion just means they see every challenge as an opportunity, and they want to, cross the road together. If they're not passionate and they're in it every day, how the hell am I going to impact as a net? So I want to work with the people that want to get stuff done and love being where they are. And so there's the right chemistry. Secondly, a place where I can add value, because it's important to me. Being in private equity for the last 15, 16 years, as I said, you're accountable, you make an impact. And I love that. And it's important to me that I'm not notional on your board. I'm not sort of just coming to a board meeting once every quarter and that's it. I want to add value because I've got value to add. I've seen things and I've got some scars and I want to share them. And then the third thing is that I can learn as well. So that comes down to the right team, making sure you're not the smartest person in the room and there's amazing people around you. But maybe the business also having new problems to the ones I had before, because, I developed this thirst from learning early on. And one day I might want to be a CEO again. I want to continue to learn and challenge myself. So being somewhere where it's all comfort zone doesn't sort of, excite me. I've got to be outside of the comfort zone, because that's where success happens. And, I back myself to learn things and be useful as well. So that's what I've been looking for, Andy, and I've
Yeah.
got some opportunities. So watch this space.
Well, I'm very excited to see what comes next for you, and I'm not alone. And I think people will just hear the story and sort of see that mindset of anything is possible and learn from that, and that will help the next generation of leaders. Because I think that's one thing that's consistent in people that I speak to when they go on these scaling journeys. You need that mindset that you can just do anything, you can achieve anything. So I think listening to this story will help people build that themselves.
It's all about hard work, consistency, and determination. Like skill you can acquire. We're born how we're born and all of that, but we choose to work hard, and it's who the last person standing is that's going to win. It's about resilience. And I think that's really important. And it was interesting because I went to India for 3 weeks to find myself and ground myself and reset, and lived in an ashram. It was a very, very, very different life. And that professional resilience that I have learned through work came in so handy at a personal level. Because, it was challenging to do what I did and live a completely different life. And it was amazing in equal measure. But that ability to say, I'm not giving up. I know this is completely outside of my comfort zone. I know I could make one phone call and I could get out of here if that's what I wanted. But I'm not. I committed and I'm going to see this through. And we spoke earlier how for the first few days, because of detox and headaches, it was like, oh my God, what have I done? And the easiest thing to have done was to give up. But once I got through that and the resilience to get through that, then it was the most amazing experience I had, feeling connected with universe, energy, people, everything. So I would say the resilience thing is key, and that's within you.
Yeah.
In fact, if you are coming from a path that is less privileged, then that is your privilege. Use that as your privilege, because those that have had it easy don't have the same fighting spirit, maybe. So use that as the thing that, makes you successful. So yeah, I completely agree. Hard work, determination, and just don't give up. It doesn't matter. You fail, you get up, because failure is a part of success. It's not the opposite of success at all. And I always think the worst thing you can do is stand still. Making no decisions, you're going nowhere. It's better to make the wrong decision and learn from it than to make no decisions at all. And I've met so many amazing people, visionaries, strategists, but they can't execute. And that execution is all what it's about. Just make stuff happen. Just keep moving, keep going. Don't do paralysis by analysis. Don't wait till it's all perfect. Don't ask for forgiveness, or ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for permission, and just keep learning and growing, because that's the only way we can even, have some hope of keeping up to date with the way that the world around us is moving. The way the world around us is moving so fast that if you stand still, you're just going to be out of date. So just keep making wrong decisions if that's what you have to do, because then you'll make the right one, and that's how you'll learn. So don't stand still.
Well, I'm leaving this feeling very inspired. Thank you, Elona.
Thank you
It's
so much.
an
Thank
absolute
you.
privilege.
I've loved it. Thank you
Really
so much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.